Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Anxiety Chats. Today, we are joined by Tasha, who is a doctor and social anxiety expert and advocate. Welcome, Tasha. It's so nice to have you here.
Lovely to be here as well. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yep, you do some amazing content on Instagram and TikTok about social anxiety, which in itself, I imagine, isn't always easy because I think that there's an idea about social anxiety that you just can't, you can't do things like that. I think a lot of people have said to me, if you have anxiety, how can you have a podcast?
Exactly. So really my journey did actually start with me wanting to overcome my social anxiety, and I thought the best way to do it would be to give myself accountability, is to share what I've learned. And that's how I started on social media, and I just kept on going with it really, and it has actually really helped. It is a lot sometimes, like the idea of going live still scares me, and I have to calm myself down, but it is so worthwhile and it is doable. That is the main thing that I want to share with people and let people know that social anxiety is treatable. You can get over it, you can overcome it. It doesn't have to take over your life. You can live the life that you desire.
100%. And it feels impossible at the time, but it's just little tiny things that help it, doesn't it? And as a doctor, are you a GP? Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm a GP, so general practitioner or family physician if you're listening from America. So like a generalist, but we do cover mental health. We do see a lot of mental health now as well, especially post-COVID, and just because of lack of funding really in general in secondary care for mental health. We do get a lot of depressions, anxiety, things that are deemed not complex enough to go to psychiatry, or the waiting lists are just 2 years plus. So we end up having to manage it ourselves whilst they await specialist care. So yeah, we do see a lot of mental health within general practice, which I'm okay with because I love mental health. Always have done since I've been in medical school. Almost became a psychiatrist, but then realised I do like the general aspect of things, and that's why I do general practice.
And as a GP, you are seeing multiple patients a day with various different illnesses. I imagine as somebody that has social anxiety, or especially at the beginning of your career, was that something that was difficult, seeing so many people in a day?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's been a good thing in general, my actual career, just because they do focus quite heavily on communication skills during university. And I think that has helped my social anxiety so much. I know a lot of people say you're very well spoken, and it's because I've had the practice where I've put the work in. We literally practice how to speak, conversational skills, how to listen, active listening, all these little things that have helped my social anxiety, which I didn't actually realise at the time. So it's really just putting in the work, putting in the practice, and it just becomes normal really. It does still get a bit overwhelming sometimes, you get a bit exhausted, especially I'm an introvert as well, so having to see so many people and introduce yourself and other people's energies, but it's just part of the parcel really.
And for you, social anxiety, it's something that I've actually never really experienced. But how does it, when you were really struggling with it, how does it feel day to day? What was it like for you? Can you explain a bit about your mental health at that time?
Yeah, so I would say for me, my social anxiety became more pronounced, and I noticed it more when I was in university, just because obviously, you're by yourself, you've not got your comforts of your family or your friends that you've grew up with, you're having to make new friends, you're having to figure out where you fit in, and there's all these events now, you've got all these, clubs and social activities, so that's where I really realised, okay, there's actually a bit of a problem. Before, I think with a lot of people that have social anxiety, they just assume it's their personality or that they're just shy. Then that's when I realised, okay, being shy is one thing, but, avoiding going to an event or making up an excuse not to go see somebody or not responding to calls, that's probably an issue. But then even then, I didn't really do that much to take control of it. And that is a common thing with social anxiety. It takes people a long time between recognising that they have social anxiety and then also going out to seek the treatment for social anxiety. But how it affected me really was, just a bit social isolation in a sense. So just keeping myself to myself. I had like a few friends and just kept within that friend group. It wasn't that I didn't want to have more friends. I just didn't really know how to make friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I never really learned, especially growing up. Like I wouldn't say I had a sheltered life. That's definitely not the case. But I did grow up in a strict household. So my mum was a single parent. She worked all the time pretty much. So I was at my grandma's house, who was very, very strict. It was like one of those households where, children are seen, not heard. So I spent a lot of time just being quiet as a child. And that just continued. And even to this day, I still enjoy my quiet time. Don't get me wrong. I am an introvert and I love it so much. And I embrace it now as a superpower. Like, you don't have to be extroverted to be normal. You can be quiet. You can like your quiet time. You can like just listening to the birds outside, reading a book, listening to your music with your headphones on. That is okay. But then as well, we do need to socialise and have that connection with other people, because we are social humans, we are social animals. We need that connection as part of one of the main components to maintaining positive mental health. Just having someone to speak to and share your emotions to, for example. So I do encourage everyone, if you do think you've got social anxiety, just to reach out. You can either contact me or just reach out to a friend, family, or try and go and speak to your doctor as well, just because there is support there. There is treatment available for it.
Definitely. And I think that's a really interesting point, because I think a lot of people with social anxiety, or generally other anxiety, I've got agoraphobia, so it's kind of in a similar kind of level.
Yeah.
And I see some people, and I've experienced myself, some people getting to the point where they're like, well, maybe I'm just okay living like this. Maybe I'm just never going to have friends, and maybe I need to make peace with the fact that I don't have friends, and almost start to be like, you know what, this is me. And not, I wonder, sometimes maybe that is just, that person, that's what they're choosing. But sometimes that decision comes from a place of just feeling like there's absolutely no hope. And you spoke about kind of being a shy and introverted person and having social anxiety, and they are two different things. What would the distinction be for you?
So introvert. So being an introvert is a personality type. So broadly speaking, personality, there's introvert and extroverts, but there are different subsections of that as well. If you don't know what your Myers-Briggs personality is, I would recommend you do it. You can get the free tests online. Just Google Myers-Briggs personality test, and free, and don't pay for it, and you'll find out what your personality type is. But basically, it's a personality type. Social anxiety, it's a mental health condition, so it's not normal. So introverts, you enjoy spending time by yourself. If you do socialise, you can enjoy it for a short period of time, but then you do need to recharge your batteries, recuperate. Social anxiety is an excessive fear of social situations. So it's an excessive fear of speaking to strangers, speaking to even loved ones. You'll get anxiety, you won't be able to do it. It'll be preventing you from doing certain things, like maybe getting a job or applying to university, or just even doing the things that you actually want to do. So maybe you like yoga, but you feel too scared to go to your yoga class to register and be with new people. It affects your quality of life, it interrupts it, and that is the main difference.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because I thinking about like speaking to you today, I was thinking back to like when I was probably about 12 or maybe younger, and it was when you're just starting to be allowed to kind of go out with friends to like a local place. And I remember going to Baguette Express all the time, and I'd ask my friend to go and order for me. I'd always be like, I can't go and ask for, especially it was so like, my friends were kind of like, I'll do it, but come on, stop being ridiculous. But I didn't want to ask for too many toppings, or I didn't want to, and it kind of quickly,
you don't want to upset people, and
I think this is a
you
big
don't want to be a burden on people. And that's actually funny that you said that, but that is one thing that I used to do as well. So you go to a restaurant and you've ordered this, that, and whatever, and they come back and the brought you something wrong. Like I used to be like, okay, it's fine, no, don't worry about it, I'll have this
Definitely.
instead. And then when I got with my husband, he's like, no, but you didn't order that. It's okay to tell them they got it wrong.
Yeah.
It's their job. They'll get it. They won't be mad at you. And it's like, actually, yeah, like understanding and realizing that, you know, it's okay to not just take crap, you know, and to
100%.
like stand, I guess it's being assertive, isn't it? So a lot of the time we're just not assertive, and it comes down to having like low self-esteem as well. So working on your self-esteem will also help with your social anxiety, anxiety in general, but especially social anxiety. A lot of it stems from you not thinking you're worthy or thinking that you're good enough. And that's where the roots of all these other thoughts that you have come from.
And 100%, I do wonder, because I know that anxiety is more common in females as well. And I do wonder, you know, there's that whole, I've been reading into it, it's really interesting, about the good girl idea of when you're growing up, there's a good girl, and the good girl is the one that sits, and kind of what like you were saying about growing up in a strict environment. There's a good girl that sits quietly and reads her book or plays with her puzzle. And then the naughty girl is the girl that's climbing everywhere and being silly and maybe being loud, behaviour that we probably accept from little boys. And I do wonder how much of that can impact a child when they're growing up to develop things like social anxiety. But I also know that I imagine you've done research into this and you know more, but I guess it's an age old, it's never going to be, I don't know how to say it, like, I guess when people talk about how does somebody develop anxiety, how does somebody develop depression even, how does somebody develop ADHD, and I guess it's the whole question of nature versus nurture and all those kinds of things. But
yeah,
do you believe that somebody is more naturally disposed to be able to have things like social anxiety?
I do think so. So with all these things, like you've mentioned depression, it's never one thing that causes it. It's usually a combination of different factors. So you have got the genetic side. So, you know, if any close family members, like your parents, your siblings, had any sort of mental health condition, then that does increase your risk of developing a mental health condition as well. So, for example, if your mum had depression, that does increase your risk of having depression too. They don't know exactly why. They do know there are genes that increase your risk, but also as well, you know, seeing your mum feeling low in mood, maybe that you're replicating that, maybe you're normalizing that, and that's why it increases your risk as well. Again, not a lot of well, there's still more research to be done into this, but these are just like theories. And then you've got the other things like just life events. So for like social anxiety, we know if you was bullied as a child, that increases your risk of having social anxiety. If you're naturally a shy person, that does increase your risk of developing social anxiety in the future as well. Just trying to think, you've said other risk factors, isn't it? So that's more the genetic side. And then I guess, yeah, just life experiences. So like I mentioned before, you know, I didn't really speak a lot as a child, and so I never really got the opportunity to develop my communication skills, my social skills. If you're in a family that doesn't particularly have other families, or there's no other children, like for example, on your street to socialise with, you just don't really have the opportunity to learn. And you don't get taught these things necessarily in school as well. Like sometimes it comes naturally to people, but it doesn't come naturally to everybody. As I said, I was quite fortunate to, you know, have friends that just kind of, you know, accepted me for me when I was in school, and then had the fortunate to do the communication skills as part of my training to become a doctor as well. But there are many social skills, communication skills courses out there. YouTube is an amazing resource for everything and anything, really, isn't it, nowadays as well?
Oh, it is.
But the main point is there's loads of different things. It would never just be one thing, but whatever the reason is why you have social anxiety, it can be overcome no matter what caused it in the first place.
This is a big thing that is just so, the main thing that's so important for listeners to know, and myself, and maybe yourself too, is that whatever it is and however difficult it feels and however long you've been struggling, and even if you're somebody that hasn't left their house in months and going to the shop feels incredibly difficult. I've seen you
Yeah,
talk on your channel, and it's something I really believe in about, well, when I was younger, it was called fear ladders, but it's kind of the same thing of
yeah,
building
exactly.
up
Yeah,
your tolerance.
that is exactly the same thing. So for social anxiety, I like to call it the anxiety ladder just because that's what I got taught. But same thing. So it's like you have whatever it is that's causing you to have the anxiety, and then you rank it into least fearful to most fearful. So, for example, if you say public speaking, maybe the most fearful version of that would be doing a speech to like 10,000 people live or something. So you'd maybe go start at the bottom and just go and speak to a colleague at work or ask a question in a meeting, you know? And then once you feel comfortable at that level, then you go to the next step. And then that's how you build it up. It's not a race. It's never a race. Like healing is an up and down journey. You'll have your ups, you'll have your downs, but you will progress. And as long as you're moving forward, that's all that matters. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. Just do what feels right for you. Go at your own pace, at your own speed, and you will succeed.
It's really important saying it's not a race, because I think that's the bit where people sometimes fumble, is when they're like, I'm not seeing any difference and I'm trying really hard, I'm doing all of this. It takes so much patience, and frustration will be a part of the journey, and you will feel at some point, oh, what's the point in doing this, because I still had a panic attack when I did this. And like you said, it's just about taking your time. It will take time.
Exactly. It does. And everyone's different. Some people can go maybe from step 1 to step 4 pretty quickly, and then they get a bit stuck between step 5. Some people, maybe 1 to 2 is a big step for them. And then as they get used to it, as they see the progress, they can speed up. So just go at your own speed. Don't compare yourself with anyone. I think that's one of our big issues just in general as a society, you know, comparing ourselves to like these perfect people, when in reality, nobody's perfect. You know, what we see on social media is not real. This is what people want to show you. They don't show you like the 10,000 like off takes or them crying the day before. Do you know what I mean? So just take everything with a pinch of salt, really.
Definitely. I mean, with full transparency, I actually had a really bad panic attack last night, and usually that would mean the whole next day you would just like not do anything. But and probably, let's say 5 years ago, today would have been a write-off. It would have been a week of being a write-off. But you know, it's not that you're never going to have a panic attack again. It's not that you're never going to feel anxious again. That's not realistic. And humans experience anxiety, just like we experience sadness or loneliness or happiness or anything.
Exactly.
But it's about kind of how you then put the nurture in place for yourself to, and it's really important as well when you're doing things like exposure, to also book in rest and book in things you enjoy and book in, you know, they're so important. Like you said, building your self-worth is so important. Do you have any tips for self-love and self-worth, how you start to feel? Because a lot of people, I think, would say they don't really like themselves, which is very sad.
Yeah, I guess the main thing really is self-compassion. So I think a lot of us, we don't have a lot of self-compassion. Like we're really kind and, you know, sweet to other people. Then it comes to ourselves and like, oh, but you're so crap, or why did you do that? You're so stupid. And we don't realise we're actually saying these things to ourselves. So I think self-compassion, I guess you can describe it as, so we all have an inner critic. So a lot of the time that inner critic is just commenting on everything wrong that you did rather than everything good that you did. And how I see it is, you know, whenever you do something or whenever you're feeling bad about a situation, instead of commenting or going to those thoughts, think about, what if it was your best friend that did this? You're not going to kick her when she's down. What would you say to your best friend? And then say that to yourself. And just being kind to yourself really is the key thing. Like you said, whenever you do something, whenever you notice progress, like keeping track of it, celebrating it, no matter how like small it is. So like for you, you know, the fact that you had a panic attack yesterday, normally you would have written off today, but you didn't. Celebrate that in whatever way you want to do it. And that is just the way to keep it moving forward and just keeping it positive. Just focus on the positive. Obviously, you'll have the negatives and they have a part to play. We all learn from our mistakes. If we don't make mistakes, we'll never learn. So see them as a positive rather than a negative. Don't dwell on them. Just see what happened. How can I stop it from happening in the future? What can I change? And then you're growing. You know, if you're not making mistakes, really, you're not growing, are you? You're just staying in the same place, is how I see it.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. And that's all such lovely things. I wish that all doctors were like you, because I think a lot of the time, well, I think doctors do get a bad rap, and doctors' receptionists get a bad rap. Can I just say, my doctor's receptionist is the nicest woman ever. I absolutely adore her. She's so lovely.
They're all nice. I think it's just a general, in the UK anyway, can't speak for anywhere else, just the NHS is just really just collapsing, really, to be honest with you.
It is.
So everyone is struggling, everyone is stressed, there's pressures everywhere. You know, there's so much demand and there's only so much capacity to give it. So it's just stressful in all directions, really.
Definitely. And it doesn't mean that your problems are important. It just means, if anyone's listening, you know, it just means your doctor is probably under unbelievable amounts of pressure to see more and more patients every day.
Yeah. I would say your doctor's probably burnt out himself or themselves, probably dealing with mental health problems themselves as well, and having to push through. And it doesn't help that we get like 10 minutes assigned, sometimes 5 minutes in places, to deal with depression, to deal with suicidal thoughts. It is not enough time at all. And as well, doesn't help that there's no resources really as well to provide support outside of us. There are community like psychiatric nurses, but there's not enough of them. They have such a high workload, it's just a mess, really, if you think about it. A mess. I'm just going to plug in my laptop. That's what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Before it comes off. Sorry, I'm not going great. There we are. So it's just a general mess, really.
It is. And I have one last question for you, actually, on something we've already talked about, which is when, and it's something I guess I'm kind of worried about a little bit as well, is when we're talking about, you know, that mothers can pass on, and predominantly mothers, also fathers, but mothers can pass on their anxiety or depression or any other type of mental health problem onto their child, could make a mother feel deterred to have a child, or guilty, or all of these horrible emotions. And I guess I just wanted to have some reassurance to those mums that you shouldn't, and myself, that you shouldn't feel guilty, I guess, for having a child that you could possibly pass things on to.
Yeah, so I think as well it's important to remember that the time that we live in now are so much better than when we were growing up and when our parents were growing up and were born. You know, mental health, it's being talked about more and more now. The conversation is getting normalised. Obviously, we've still got a long way to go, but it's so much better. So I think, you know, if you do have anxiety, if you do have any mental health condition, you shouldn't not have children just because of that reason. I think when you do have children, I think it's so important just to know that they can share their emotions with you, to be honest with them as well, and just not hide anything or shelter them, because they need to know how to have a positive mental health, you know, how to improve their well-being, how to talk about their feelings, express themselves. So that's your role, really. And if anything, you'll probably be better at helping them with their mental health than somebody who doesn't, who's never had any issues. You know, when they're going through, for example, their exam stress, you'll know all the techniques and the tools that they can try already. So I would say don't let that deter you if that's the only reason why you're thinking not to have children. And obviously, you know, speak to somebody if you really have concerns about it before you get pregnant and during your pregnancy as well.
Definitely. And sorry, this is actually the last question. If anybody's listening right now who feels like really no one understands them and they just feel really just so stuck and that they cannot do it, they can't do it, us talking about recovery and stuff, they just feel really stuck, what would your advice be to them?
I would say, you know, reach out to me, reach out to Emily. But first thing would be just think about what is it that's making you feel stuck? What is it that's blocking you in a sense? journaling can be really, really helpful for this, you know, just writing down freely, just free writing thoughts that comes out. I always recommend people, you know, when they say they don't know why they feel like this, just keep asking yourself why, and then eventually you will get to the root cause of why. Usually it's something to do with you either don't feel like you're good enough, again related to like self-esteem, or you don't maybe actually just know what will help, what the steps are, and in that case then you need to speak to a specialist, a professional who will be able to guide you and put you on the right track. But, you know, nowadays there's a lot of things on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So have a little search. You will find your people, you will find your tribe. It can be really tough having a mental health condition, especially like with anxiety, because we don't really talk about it as much. A bit like with depression, it's not really talked about that much either. So just finding other people that have it, that get it, that will help you open up as well, and also sharing experiences and knowing that you're not alone, and that a lot of people are probably in the same position as you are now, and you can get through it, and you will get through it. Just stay at it and don't give up.
Definitely. Like, social media can get such a bad rap, can't it? But actually,
Yeah,
I think it's just one of the best things. You're going to find it's okay to have online friends. Like, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many people that totally get it. And it's easier behind a screen sometimes because you're not worried about awkward pauses or looking people in the eye or anything like that.
Exactly. Or just even sending a text. You don't even have to, like a comment, you don't even have to post anything, or a direct message to somebody. You don't even have to like have your picture on there either. You can put like a picture of your cat. You can put a fake name, so you can be like anonymous. So it's so open now just to get the help and support that you need.
Definitely. And Dr. Tasha's links will be in the description of this, and all of her content, if you're struggling with social anxiety, is so helpful. And like she said, she's welcoming people to reach out to her and talk to her, and that's so kind of you. And thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure. And just on that note as well, I will be starting a YouTube channel at some point just to share this knowledge and have it somewhere where it's there like lifelong and you can look at it whenever. So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited about that too. That'll be so great. You've just been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's okay. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. My first podcast as well.
First podcast, again, you did absolutely amazing. Exactly.
Another level on my ladder.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you would like to come on, just like Tasha, I would absolutely love to have you on, and we can do what we can to make you feel as comfortable as possible sharing your story here. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. We will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.